Welcome to the Life of Being podcast, where we talk about all things life from a healthcare perspective all around the world. I'm your host, Kelly Tan, and in each episode, we'll explore stories, science, and wisdom to help you live well, think deeper, and express life fully. Let's begin. Today, we're excited to be joining with Dr. Robin Broff, joining us from Sydney, Australia. Dr. Robin is a chiropractor, speaker, podcast host, and entrepreneur. He is the founder and director of Adjusting to Health Chiropractic, a family wellness group of practices in Sydney focused on transformative patient education and creating predictable outcomes utilizing the Health Blueprint protocol. His purpose is to make proactive nervous system care a first for families. He's now on a mission to build the careers and practices that develop Australia's top chiropractors, raising a standard in the profession and in doing so helping more people discover chiropractic care. Dr. Robin, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks so much. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here, jump on and just jam out for the next however long and talk chiropractic and
Yes.
provide lots of value to our listeners.
And just a context, he just flew from New Zealand, touchdown, ran, do everything, and is still up talking about chiropractic. So we'll
That's
start
right.
by you sharing your story in terms of how you got into chiropractic and also your journey into raising the standards of chiropractic in Australia.
Yeah, for sure. So I think my journey, I normally share this story as a story when I was 15 years old, and my mum had this like crazy experience with her lower back. But I realized actually upon thinking about that and diving a little bit deeper, it actually started a lot earlier. Because when I was 10 years old, I remember this experience where I was living in Melbourne at the time, actually, and we used to live in a big house, and there was this drawer at the very bottom, and all the pills were in there. And one time I was sick and really unwell, and my family was like, "Hey, Robin, you should take one of these paracetamols." Like they gave me a Panadol, and I thought, you know what? Like the last time I took this, I don't really think it did much. And I remember, like, literally when I was 10 years old, I remember, like, looking at the back of the packet and reading all the side effects. And I thought, I don't think this is really worth it as a 10-year-old kid, right? So I started to develop that awareness then. And I think really, like, all the chiropractors that find success and fulfillment and alignment in this amazing profession, I think that they're all people that value humanism and they value, nature, and they value the fact that the body's self-healing and self-rejuvenating and self-developing. So I think those values really started to align for me then looking back in my past. But yeah, that was, I guess, what perhaps started me on that journey. But really what the catalyst was exactly that story about my mum. So I was walking back from school one day, and I'm an only child, so I'm like, my mum's everything, right? Especially when I was 15, yeah. So I remember this time when I was coming back from school and I was knocking on the door, and there was something really weird because my mum didn't answer, right? My mum would always open the door. She was always home at the time. And I used to have a little Pomeranian at the time as well. And he wasn't barking. I thought, this is really odd, right? So I grabbed my keys out, I let myself in, and then I walk in the house and I'm like, Mum? Mom, and there's nothing, just dead silent. I thought, this is really weird now. Like, my mum would have texted me or she'd be home, right? So I then look into her bedroom, mum's not there. I look down the corridor, mum's not there. And then I walk around into the kitchen, and we used to have this like big kitchen pantry, and I peer around the kitchen pantry, and then I can see on the ground there's these 2 feet on the kitchen tiles. And laying face up on the cold, hard kitchen tiles is my mum. And she had tears in her eyes. She was in absolute agony. And I think just looking at her in that moment, like this was like a really memorable experience. So I can almost, like when I share this story, I can almost like viscerally like remember how it felt to be there. And I remember just looking in her eyes, and she was just so broken at that point. And I really felt like she knew that I knew that she could no longer be the strong, supportive mother that she's always been for me. So that was really the turning point for her and for me. So up until this point, she'd been on like heaps of painkillers, physio, She'd been to the hospital 3 times. She'd been on morphine once for back pain, and she was really lost. She had no idea what to do with herself, and she was like, "How do I fix this?" She has a 37-degree scoliosis for context, so
Mm.
she's had back issues at this stage for a very long time. And then this time, she was like, I can't move. Like, this is terrible. So me and Mitch literally like picked her up and put her in the back of the car, and we took her to see our local chiropractor at the time, Dr. Shady Botros, the Egyptian guy. He used to practice out of Frankston Family Chiropractic at the time, and I think he's moved to Queensland now. And after that, my mum could walk. And as a 15-year-old kid, I'm sitting there watching this man perform miracles on my mum. And I thought, this is awesome. So that was really my first like proper exposure to chiropractic care. And I think, yeah, looking back, that was really like the catalyst that, then I guess from the seed, the tree grew, right? So then
Mm.
everything kind of fell into place and there was a whole lot of other stuff. But that was really like that experience I had that I believe led me down this path.
I really like how your storytelling, how you guide listeners and everything. With where you are, did you study it in Australia? And what is it that you notice with graduates or students coming up with the uncertainty in them and the identity crisis that they have, knowing that you're in such an amazing profession, but they didn't know it or they didn't want to be part of it. So what is it that you see with students and graduates nowadays?
Mm. Yeah, so I did graduate in Australia, so I studied at RMIT in
Mm.
Melbourne. And what I see amongst almost all the unis, there's one university actually that has a really strong, I guess, focus on philosophy,
Mm.
and that's Australian Chiropractic College. But aside from that, I find that generally speaking, a lot of the students that come out of the other universities really struggle with philosophy because it's something that I guess I don't know, for some reason isn't part of the curriculum, which the university doesn't necessarily have the full power to control. Um, anyway, besides the point, one of the main issues I find with students is I talk to a lot of fifth years, and the question that they continuously struggle to answer is like, what's your purpose as a chiropractor? Like, what's the point of chiropractic? What are you doing when you're adjusting someone? Or even better, what happens during an adjustment? And I think one would agree that, a philosophically sound chiropractor should be able to answer that, in a relatively similar and succinct way, like amongst the profession, right? There should be things that we agree upon as a profession in allied healthcare, right?
Mhm.
But some of the responses I get to that range from I have no idea, I've never thought about it that way, all the way to like just like completely different things. Like people will say like, oh, like well, I'm just like moving the bone, and like other people will be like, oh, actually, I think it's something to do with the nervous system, which obviously is the right answer because the reality is that your purpose as a chiropractor is to find subluxation, to locate parts of the spine that aren't moving the way they need to be, whatever you want to call it. In chiropractic, you typically refer to that as a subluxation, and then your job is to adjust. So to get movement in the area. And the purpose of that is to restore normal function to the nervous system. Because
Mm.
if we want to actually, through chiropractic, help our clients, our patients, our practice members get healthy and restore health through chiropractic, we need to have a healthy, properly functioning nervous system. But what prevents that from happening is having a subluxated spine. So when you have a spine that's not moving well, it impacts proprioception, feedback input into the brain, and our nervous system becomes dysfunction. So when we do an adjustment, like this is what the students need to understand is that we're really having an impact on the nervous system and on the brain. And when we can change the nervous system's function, that's really when healing starts to occur in the body. So that's something I find myself talking a lot about. And that's probably the main thing in terms of philosophy that the students are really missing, like collectively. I find it in Australia.
And how is it that you're graduating from RMIT, not teaching so much about chiropractic philosophy, but you actually knew deeper? Was it something that you studied yourself, or you reached out to someone, or you went to a seminar? I know you talk about investing in yourself, so how did you got into understanding deeper what chiropractic actually is?
Yeah, well, I think it's one of the key core pillars of chiropractic. And I think actually what really led me down the path of studying philosophy and desiring to attain a deeper understanding of chiropractic philosophy was I just really felt uncomfortable when my patients would ask me these types of questions, once they've been in, they've finished first phase, second phase of care, et cetera. And they've been in care for, like 6 months, 12 months, a couple of years. And they'd ask me these questions and I'd struggle to answer them. And I would sense the uncertainty in my voice. And I could see how that was impacting my patient's certainty and level of trust in me and in chiropractic. And I thought, like this is not good. And then I also realized that all the chiropractors that I look up to and admire, they're all principled chiropractors who have really solid foundational like philosophy. And I also recognize that all the top chiropractors, they always seem to agree on these like, challenging questions that I would struggle with. Like before I was saying how a lot of fifth years struggle to answer those questions. I was the exact same. I probably couldn't answer half those questions up until like my second year out.
Mhm.
And all of the guys that I looked up to, they like all agreed, and it was really cool. And yeah, it just inspired me to learn more about that. And I've also had three coaches as well. I've still got two coaches at the moment, and learning a lot through them. And really, the main motivator for me was to help my patients understand the real value of chiropractic care, which comes from adapting chiropractic as a lifestyle success strategy.
What is one key thing that you like every chiropractic student? What is that requirement? Like maybe they should read something or do something or understand something before they graduate, if you have the ability to change that and implement to all the chiropractic schools, at least for Australia.
Mm.
What is it that you want students to understand?
That's a really great question. And I wish there was like one simple answer. But the reality is it's a combination of things. So I've thought about this long and hard, and
Hmm.
I posted a video actually on my Instagram, and I coined this the law of five. So the idea behind this was, okay, I wanted to provide a lot of value to fifth years in particular. And fifth year is like make or break. When you're in your fifth year of chiropractic studies, that's really when you have like 1 year, you have 12 months to like really set yourself up for rock and associateship,
Mm,
rock and start to your career, or you can just go completely downhill. You can maybe like
mm,
fail a unit, you can maybe like, I don't know, graduate and not be able to get a good associateship, and things can just really turn around at that point. So
mm,
like the law of five is, if I can remember it off the top of my head, is number one, like find five chiropractors to observe. So I personally learned a lot through osmosis. I observed 10 chiros in my fifth year. That was really, really valuable for me. It really helped me understand who I want to be, and it really helped me start to develop that base level philosophical understanding, and at least just guide me also to a better associateship position. So
mm,
that's number one. So observe five chiropractors. Next one is like get a CA job. You just learn so much through osmosis, and you get to see how practice runs and operates. And you just learn a lot about retention, about procedures and systems, and what goes on behind the scenes in a successful chiropractic office where, a real impact in the community is actually able to be made. The next one is go to five seminars. So like I have a belief that students can't afford not to go to seminars. So like I used to, when I was a student, I was working like two, three different jobs. Actually, I think at one point I had four jobs, including like a casual, like kind of side hustle. But yeah, like 2 to 4 jobs. I was like every student is these days. Almost everyone's working two jobs. That's crazy. And yeah, and I just had this belief that, like I always saw myself as the single only appreciating asset that I have access to, and also the best appreciating asset, right? So I always
mm,
thought that like no government, no system, no depression can ever take away my knowledge. So I might as well invest in my skill set and what I know and what I can learn.
mm,
So that's number three. Number four is find five friends that are like also keen to just like become really successful chiropractors. They want to do all those things as well, and you keep each other accountable. So like I don't know who says it, but you always become an average of the five people you surround yourself the most with, on
yes,
some degree, right?
yes.
And the last one is, what's the last one? OBS, get a CA job. And getting a chiropractic table at home is really important, and getting your hands on as many different bodies as possible.
And
Yeah.
that's available in your Instagram post.
Yeah,
So
that's right. Yeah.
if you missed it out, just go to Dr. Robin Broff and check it out
Yeah.
over there. With that said, what sort of resources or books you recommend to all chiropractic students or even graduates? What's the best one that
Mhm.
you've recommend to people?
The first one that comes to mind is the reality check. So Dr. Heidi
Mm,
Horvick, she is on fire. She's really, really good. That one's awesome. It's about 120 pages, I think, from
yeah.
memory, and it really talks about chiropractic philosophy. But it's like what I really like about it is it uses a lot of like complex, like doctor
Mm,
words and stuff, and there's a lot of like medical jargon in there, but you
yes.
kind of need to know it, right? But at the same time, the way she writes is it's somehow still easy to comprehend and understand. I really enjoyed that. That's a really good read. And honestly, like I think when people ask me this question, like I actually haven't read that many different chiropractic books. I've actually spent a lot more time reflecting and like actually trying to apply feedback from my coaches. Also like studying fewer books. So like I find that in the last like 2 years for me, like I'm really trying to create impact by helping my associates become better and more
Mm.
skilled, and figuring out, okay, what kind of systems can we deploy in the practice that we can develop that can actually help more people in the community discover chiropractic and benefit more from chiropractic. So that's really where I spend a lot more of my time, energy, and focus at the moment, though.
And with yourself, what is one key thing that you see in a successful chiropractic associate?
100%. coachable. So they're going to have a growth mindset. And like, this is something I see really common in like the average chiropractor. They have this mindset of, okay, I have this issue, this problem came up in practice, and they always try and think about the reason why it happened. And they're always pointing somewhere except this way at themselves, right?
Mm.
So even sometimes you might have a patient that comes in that's just really terrible for whatever reason, right? They're not respectful, they're not going to be compliant, all these things. And, it's clear they're not going to get great results with chiropractic, at least in your office, right? And that's
Yes.
okay. But I always encourage, my associates, and I find that this is something that all like the best associates, like, and the best chiropractors always have the ability to do this, is to ask themselves, what could I have done differently in that situation? How could I have been better next time? And I've always found that mindset and that way of thinking, that philosophy has always served me better than just, going, oh, yeah, he or she did this. And, it doesn't serve us. Like, if you ask yourself, how does that benefit you? You struggle to answer, right? So if a patient comes in and let's say that, they're 10 minutes late and then they, let's say you refer them out for a spinal x-ray, for example, and they don't want to get x-rays done and they're just not listening to you and whatever it is, and, everything goes to shambles. Yeah, like you can spend all day, talking and bad mouthing and getting frustrated until you're blue in the face. But then how does that help you level up and serve your community better? It doesn't, right? The only way to do it is go, okay, like, I wonder how I could have communicated better next time. How could I have introduced myself? Maybe there's a system in the practice that could have been optimized to make sure that they weren't late and all these other things. Yeah. On that note, actually, just thinking about that, I find that a lot of the breakthrough moments that I've had in practice, that my associates have had in practice, have come from actually reflecting on a scenario or an experience, with someone that didn't go well. It forced us to learn from that.
And that's also when you've talked about reflecting, have a journal and reflect on all the different things.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I should have.
Going
It's
through that.
upstairs actually, so I still have it. I used to have this like brown leather like journal or diary, if you want to call it, and it was like my OBS journal. So I brought it like every single OBS I did. I actually observed the same chiropractor for I think about 8 months or so in my 5th year, every Wednesday from 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. And I had this like same journal I always wrote in, and then all the other like 10 chiros I observed as well. I always like thought of questions before going there. I thought, okay, what do I know about this person? How long have they been in practice? What style do they do? What do I really need right now? And, I try and not bombard them with questions, but, ask a few good quality questions, and I'd always write the answers in there. That was like a massive catalyst for me. Because to be honest, like I wasn't a great student. Like leading up to the end of 4th year, I went to all the uni events and like all that sort of stuff. And then COVID happened. So that kind of put an end to that. Yeah, it became much more difficult. Like they kept closing the student clinic, and like a lot of the OBS that I did was like kind of hush hush. And it was such an interesting time to be alive, honestly. Yeah.
What is one question that you usually ask people
When I'm interviewing someone, or?
when you're observing others
Oh, and I'm
accepting
observing.
practice?
Yeah, absolutely. So,
Yeah.
and to clarify as well, I still continue to observe. The last chiropractor I observed was actually Dr. Oz in his practice, and I've observed Dr. Kim, Dr. Human last year as well. And I always try and have like, one or two chiropractors that I observe every year. I'm actually trying to tee up some OBS with like an acquaintance I have that lives a little bit further out of town. It's just really interesting. You learn so much from the way different people do things, right? And there's so much in chiropractic, and I think it's fascinating to see how different people have, different techniques, different styles, different ways of communicating the chiropractic message, different practice setups, different technology in their practice, and that sort of stuff. The questions that I'd encourage you to ask, like as an associate, really is like you have to give chiropractors context. So a lot of the time, students will ask me like, "Hey, like, what are your goals? What were you focused on, etc. When you were in your 5th year and that sort of stuff." And I think it's a good question, but I think a great question is giving the chiropractor that you're observing a bit of context and saying, "Hey, look, this is what I'm struggling on. This is who I want to be. I want to be this type of chiropractor. I want to be able to do this. I want to work with these types of people. If that was your goal, what would you do?" And then it allows, the person that they're observing to really give them like much better quality, tailored advice.
It's not like a generic one, it's more like tailored to you specifically in terms of your situation.
That's right. I've actually got another one. One thing I noticed when students would come and observe me, and also like when I would go and observe other chiropractors in my 4th and particularly my 5th year, I didn't really do much OBS at all until I started my 5th year, which was a mistake. But one of the things I noticed was that when I'd adjust one of the chiropractors, because usually at the end they'd go, well, great, like, do you want an adjustment? I'd say, I'd love one. And then, of course, I'd say, would you like one? Like, I'd love to give you one if you can give me feedback, right?
Yes, yes.
And naturally, the first thing the chiropractor says when a student adjusts them is what? They say, oh, that was pretty good. Well done. Yeah, you're doing great, right? Default, 99% of the time. So the best question you can ask is actually, hey, I want you to tell me at least 3 things I could have done better there. It's a bit of a tricky question, but the reality is that I think unless you tell them that, they're going to assume that you just want to, like, be, I don't know, flattered
Like
with
flapped and
positivity and words, right? Yeah, because some people like that. Some
yeah.
people, they'll do an adjustment. They just want to be told that they're amazing and they're the best, and that kind of, fuels their ego, I guess, or makes them feel light and fluffy and warm on the inside. But if you really want to ask good questions, just say, hey, look, I want you to be totally transparent with me. Like, was that good? Did it suck? Like, it's okay. I want you to give me 3 things that I could have done better that time.
And I think like not everyone is brave enough to actually face their inadequacy and actually improve from there. But that's like the first step for you to improve, isn't it? So
yeah, absolutely. So like I said before, we have to be coachable. We have to have a growth mindset. I think that's a demonstration of that.
what change do you wish to see in chiropractic?
Speaking specifically for the change I wish to see in Australian chiropractors is I just wish that collectively we had more certainty in what we do. I think when a healthcare provider or practitioner doesn't have the certainty in what it is they do, it really robs patients from, being able to build that trust and that connection, and really takes away from your authority. So when we look at the research, what are the top 2 things that patients want from their healthcare providers the most is they want them to be trustworthy, passionate, and honest. And it's really difficult to build that if we don't have certainty. And I believe one of the reasons why chiropractic gets like bashed so much, I mean, you'll see on the internet, like people, making silly videos of chiropractors. You'll see, every second GP, even every third, I think even almost 9 out of 10 GPs in Australia, at least in my community, have a really poor opinion of chiropractic. They'll say, oh, don't go to see your chiropractor. People will say, oh, subluxation is not real. People say, oh, chiropractors cause strokes and all this sort of stuff, right? There's a lot of noise. And I think a lot of that comes from, or stems from at least, the lack of certainty that we have in the profession. So I have a really controversial belief around this, and a lot of people love to celebrate and talk about the diversity in chiropractic. And I think it's great to have a technique diversity. I think that is great. I think it's really good that different people can, look at the same spine, the same nervous system, and practice different techniques that, may be more or less effective for certain individuals. I think it's amazing.
Yes.
But what I really like about the diversity in chiropractic specifically is the diversity in the philosophy. I really believe very strongly that we need to anchor and agree upon a common philosophy. What happens when an adjustment is delivered? And how do we then express that and share that with the patient? Just the same way how if you look at a medical doctor, take this pill, you'll feel better. That's what all the doctors say. So imagine if all the chiropractors said, okay, when we do this adjustment, that's going to have an impact on your nervous system and it's going to help your body heal itself. Because all the adjustment does is it removes interference and the body does the rest. If we could all agree on that and we could all understand that, then I think we'd have a much better profession. So that's really the change that I want to see.
And what do you think is the number one barrier that's causing that? The unity in terms of the understanding of the chiropractic philosophy?
Yeah. Honestly, considering that so many chiropractors are new grads, so 49% of chiropractors drop out in their first 3 years in Australia, and a lot of I think there's about 6,600 registered chiropractors in Australia off the top of my head. A lot of them are new grads, like in their first 3 years out. So it makes sense that we don't have that much certainty, but I don't think it's okay. Like that should be the number one thing that you aim to build, or the number one focus, that you should have straight out of uni is, okay, how do I have more certainty? And the reality is that we often, we love to criticize public perception, right? If someone, if you're listening to this as a chiropractor, as an associate, and maybe that agitates you a little bit, or you think, oh, I don't know, maybe that's not me. I don't think that's the real reason. The real reason is, it's all that bad stuff, that internet stuff going on that I was talking about before, people saying, all these lies about chiropractic causes strokes and all this other nonsense that's on the internet. The reality is that, if we want to change public perception, we have to understand that public perception only ever changes as a downstream effect from professional certainty. So until we collectively in this, very small, niche group of professionals that we are in Australia can collectively agree upon what it is that we're doing when we're
Mm.
adjusting a spine, then I don't think that we're ever going to see that change, unfortunately. So that's the number one thing I want from the profession in Australia is I want more chiropractors to be showing up with more certainty for their community.
We all know that the external force can't budge in if the internal is strong. So if
Exactly
there's
right.
noise or internal conflict already, then whatever you say is going to be a different message coming out also. And
100%, yeah.
what
So
is
like the
your
Romans say, united we
yeah.
conquer, divided we beg. Yeah.
Yeah, that's
It's
deep.
very true in chiropractic.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I think like whatever you're seeing in Australia is not just in Australia specifically. I think it's a worldwide issue, different
Really, yeah.
yeah, different conflicts also. Now you're
Mm.
talking, you did mention that you're also leading the movement in terms of changing and raising the standards in chiropractic profession. What is it that you're doing? Maybe you can go into specific if there's any, and more importantly, what is it that we can do so that we can continue raise the profession together?
Well, that's like a 1 hour podcast in its own.
Or two.
But I think a lot of that comes from, where we choose to practice.
What do you mean?
Because, we don't rise to like our potential. I believe that we fall to the level of our systems. And I think picking the right, especially first associateship, is absolutely critical when it comes to, okay, how much certainty am I going to be able to develop? What kind of level of practice success am I going to be able to experience? And it all
Mm,
comes down to that first associateship. So I
mm,
think like the short answer to that is like we just need to be spending more time on like finding an associateship that's really in line with our values and understanding, okay, what goals do I have? What do I want to achieve in practice? Who do I want to become through this position? I think if we could, more of us could look at it through that lens, there'd be more chiropractors in associateships that are better aligned with who they want to be. And
mm.
that's going to allow them to develop that certainty and just have more fun in practice and do a better job serving the community. So I think a lot of those issues that, we referenced before do stem from chiropractors that are, practicing in those wrong roles and they have that misalignment.
Well, going along the line of nailing their first associateship, what is the thing that they need to look out for into knowing that this practice fits me or vice versa? What is the thing that they need to look out for?
Yeah, well, there's actually so many things. And I actually have a 20-point checklist. It's called your first associateship checklist. And essentially it goes through all of it in a lot of detail. But I think the most important thing is you've got to start with why. So understand what your goals are, what your values are, and then find a practice that shares those values. And a practice's values, like a company or a small business or single location office, right? A
Mm,
lot of people, they have these abstract values on their website. Some people will have like, 10 different values there. Our values are honesty, integrity, patient first care. And it's like, okay, what does that actually mean? And how does that change what you do? And sometimes I think it's so funny when you talk to people about their values that, they claim to have from a business perspective and they struggle to recite them and put them into words in context. So like,
yes,
I
yeah.
think you have to be able to, judge a business or a chiropractor's values, by the actions that they take. I think
Mm.
that's more meaningful and more powerful than just going, okay, like, so what are your values? And just listening to what they say, but rather be more receptive and observant of what they do.
What is one thing that you learned in your associationship that you had previously that you're continuing to spread the same message with what you learned previously with your principal chiropractor?
Yeah. So my first associateship, what I really learned to be true is what is in one of Robert Kiyosaki's books. And it's your first job you should pursue for what you can learn, not for what you can
Mm,
earn. So there's so many new grad chiropractors out there that are, trying to make six figures in their first year and, focused on, okay, what's the percentage and all that sort of stuff.
yeah.
But they miss the most important thing that I discovered through my first associateship was the value of having proper support and mentorship. And every single associateship ad, every single opportunity posted anywhere online is going to say you get lots of support, great supportive team, lots of mentorship from whoever. But you have to ask, okay, so what does that look like? Can you
Right.
explain? Can you quantify? Like, is this a weekly check-in? Is it I call you once a month for 10 minutes when I feel like it? Or is it like, okay, I'm actually there with you every day for the first month? And like, what does that look like?
Mm,
And having a really clear roadmap and onboarding. Actually, this is probably like one of the best questions you can ask actually in an interview, a little bit off topic, but it's so important for everyone that's like kind of nodding their head and getting value from what I've just said in the last 5 minutes. The most important thing you have to ask at an interview is, okay, can you share with me what your onboarding procedures are for new grad chiropractors, like specifically? And if someone really struggles to answer that, I'd really encourage you to like second guess like everything else they've said. If they don't have certainty around that and what that looks like and be
mm,
able to say, okay, this is what I did for, this person that person, etc. I've done it with these people. And, this is what 3, 6, 12 months looks like for you as a new grad. If they don't have clarity and certainty around that, or I'd be looking
Yeah.
at my other options, I think.
I think you just dropped a really, really important advice and tips because, as you mentioned, all the description they usually say sunshine and rainbows, but then when you
That's
speak
right. Yeah.
past them, I think that's a really, really good advice for graduates and students so that they can find
Mm,
they land their first associateship there. Now, we're
mm.
coming towards the end there, and I appreciate your time and sharing your story and experience. Where is the best place for them to reach out to you, Dr. Robin?
Yeah, best place is definitely my Instagram. So it's Dr. Broff. So Robin. Broff has two F's in it, Broff. So pretty much my audience is entirely new grads and chiropractors, new grad chiropractors and students in their fourth and fifth years. So really my goal is to just help more people have a better start to their careers,
Mm.
actually build a sustainable career and really just help accelerate practice success. So I post content every week, short form reels. I'm also on Spotify as well. So we have a podcast, Kara Edge. So pretty much if you like the shorts and you like the reels, check out the podcast if you're into that kind of stuff.
Yes, lots of gems that you're dropping. We'll place all
That's
your
right.
information into the description below. And before we stop recording, what is one phrase you like to leave to the listeners before we end the recording?
Ooh. I want to leave people with something that's inspiring and reminds people like there's probably a lot of people listening to this podcast. I used to listen to heaps of podcasts like when I
Mm,
was like in my first year, second year out, and I was really struggling at a lot of the time. So imagine the majority of people listening to this are going to be like in that situation. And a
mm.
lot of those people I think need some hope and just need some excitement and need to like develop that belief somehow in themselves like hey it's actually possible to like build a really successful fun practice that energizes me and like because there's so many people struggling in chiropractic at least in Australia.
No, that's, yeah.
Mm. Yeah, well I guess it's just that so
Just
yeah
mic
so
drop
really
for more
just
info. Like follow your,
yeah, well, the thing actually I want to leave our listeners with is if you're someone that perhaps right now, maybe you're doing it tough, maybe you're losing belief in yourself, don't lose belief in chiropractic because I've seen like hundreds of people transform, like permanently change the trajectory of their health, their family through chiropractic care. And that's
mm,
something that all of us chiropractors listening right now can do with our hands. So, if you're not there yet, believe in yourself or at least believe in chiropractic because absolutely miracles are possible when you find the certainty to communicate with your patients and you understand the philosophy behind what you're doing, miracles happen.
a great way. Thank you so much for your time, Dr. Robin, and I will leave all your details in the description below so they can reach out to you, follow your content, and then learn more from yourself then.
You're so welcome. Thanks for having me on, Dr. Kelly. It was a pleasure.
Thank you for tuning in to the Life of Being podcast. Let us know what is your one key takeaway from this episode. And if this conversation inspired you, share it with a friend who might find it helpful today. Until next time, take care of your health and take care of your being.